In this video, we will learn how to properly implement Nexus Dashboard virtually, specifically in vCenter. But first, it is important to know some considerations to ensure that the implementation is successful. Virtual appliance. The virtual form factor allows you to deploy a Nexus Dashboard cluster using VMware ESX with OBA files or Red Hat Enterprise Linux KVM using a QCOW2 file. In this video, we will work with an OBA file. Scale guidelines. A basic deployment consists of 1 or 3 primary nodes, which are required for the cluster to come up. For virtual cluster, up to 2 standby nodes are also supported, but only with a 3-node app profile for a controller-only or orchestration-only deployment. Remember to use the Nexus Dashboard capacity planning tool that we saw in a previous video to correctly define the cluster size. Cluster sizing limitations. These limitations apply to scale and cluster sizing. Single-node deployments cannot be extended to a 3-node cluster after the initial deployment. If you deploy a single-node cluster and want to extend it to a 3-node cluster or add secondary nodes, you will need to back it up, deploy a 3-node based cluster, and then restore the backup on this later. Single-node deployments do not support additional secondary or standby nodes. For 3-node clustered, at least 2 primary nodes are required for the cluster to remain operational. Okay, but now let's install the platform. First, we need the file for deployment. So we need to go to the Cisco Software Download Center and get it. To do this, we can perform a quick search in a browser or simply type software.cisco.com. Select Downloads and choose Nexus Dashboard. Next, we select the option 4.1, and for this example, we will use the OBA file. Once the download is complete, we access the vCenter to begin the installation. Once we log into the vCenter, we begin deploying the virtual machine. We select Deploy OBF template and start the process. Next, we select Local File and locate the file we just downloaded from the Cisco Software Downloads page. Then, we choose a name for the virtual machine and its location. Remember that we are creating a cluster, so, as mentioned earlier, it is important to consider latency between nodes. Connectivity between the nodes is required on both networks with additional round-trip time or RTT requirements. The maximum RTT between nodes within the same Nexus Dashboard cluster is 50 milliseconds. Between nodes in different clusters, if the clusters are connected using multi-cluster connectivity, is 500 milliseconds. Between external DNS servers and the Nexus Dashboard cluster is 5 seconds. And to fabric switches is 150 milliseconds. Afterward, we select the data center node where we will install the virtual machine. We need to review the resources the virtual machine will require to function correctly. In the next step, we must select the virtual machine profile, application, or data. The virtual form factor supports the following 2 profiles. Data node. This profile with higher system requirements is designed for higher scale and/or unified deployments. Includes requirements like 32 virtual CPUs, 128 gigabits of RAM, and more. Application node. This profile with lower system requirements can be deployed as secondary nodes, can also be deployed as primary nodes but does not support unified deployment. Some requirements are 16 virtual CPUs, 64 gigabits of RAM, and more. We recommend that each Nexus Dashboard node is deployed in a different ESXi server. At this point, we should use the information obtained from the capacity planning tool to choose the correct profile and adjust the necessary resources. Next, we need to select the storage and format for the virtual disk we will be using. At this point, it is recommended to use a single storage location for each node. Additionally, we should select Disable Storage DRS for this virtual machine, as Nexus Dashboard does not support VMware DRS. From the drop-down menu, select Thick Provisioning Lazy 0 as the virtual disk format. Now, we need to indicate the networks to be used. It is important to indicate that we have two networks to consider: Data Network and Management Network. Nexus Dashboard is deployed as a cluster connecting each node to two networks. Data Network. This network is used for backend, cluster, and infra connectivity for optimal performance. Something really important is that telemetry traffic for switches and onboard fabrics will be managed through this network. The management network is used for seamless GUI and front-end operations, DNS and NTP communications, Nexus Dashboard firmware uploads, multi-cluster connectivity, and more. The two networks have the following requirements. The management network and data network must be in different subnets. Changing the data subnet requires redeploying the cluster. Then, we will select a password for the rescue user, which will be the user to install the node and create the cluster. You might be wondering, what happened to the root user? Root access to the Nexus Dashboard software is restricted to Cisco TAC only. Next, we specify the IP address of the management network and its corresponding gateway. The data network information will be included later during the cluster creation process. Nexus Dashboard supports IPv4, IPv6, or dual IPv4 and IPv6 configurations for cluster nodes and roles. When defining an IP address configuration, the following guidelines apply. All cluster nodes and networks must have a consistent IP configuration, whether IPv4, IPv6, or dual. If you deploy the cluster in IPv4 mode and want to switch to dual IPv4 and IPv6 or IPv6 only, you will need to redeploy. Pure IPv6 mode is only supported in physical and virtual environments. It is not supported in cloud environments. Then, we will see a summary of the information selected during this process. If we confirm that everything is correct, we begin the deployment process. This process must be repeated for all the nodes we will use in the cluster. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you in the next one.